Michael Steele's attacks of foot and mouth disease are testing Republicans' patience, and the Tea Party is testing the notion that Republicans can have a big tent. It's all in a year when people are guessing the party has a chance of taking back Congress, that is the Republican Party, if they can get their act together. The question is, can they? Joining me now from New York is Republican strategist and CNN contributor Ed Rollins. And in Philadelphia is an associate of Michael Steele, Columbia University professor Marc Lamont Hill. Thanks, gentlemen, for being with us. Let me start with you, Ed, again, for rejoining us. Ron Paul said that the Republican Party needs to do a better job of reaching out to independents, many of whom are against this war. Do you agree?
Well, listen, anytime you want to run a general election, you have to have independent voters in order to be successful. But when you're the party chairman, your responsibility is the base. Your responsibility are Republican voters. And in this particular issue, it is so contrary to a very significant portion of both our platform, our nominee, John McCain, and others. It's Mitch McConnell, it's major Republicans in the House and the Senate who are all on the opposite side of where he is. And I think to a certain extent, this is a policy differential that is very, very significant. And it's not his job to set policy. It's his job to raise money, help elect Republicans.
Mark, a lot of frustration with Michael Steele. He's a friend of yours. You called him today. What was your message to him?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to call us friends, but I would say that I've known Michael for a long time, and I do reach out to him from time to time just to offer support and tell him to fight the good fight. As someone on the left, I'm glad to see Michael Steele in office, and I hope that he stays there a long time. I think part of the challenge here, though, from the right is not just that Michael Steele's made gaffes, and certainly Michael Steele's made a lot of gaffes, but it's also that Michael Steele upset the Republican Party establishment from the beginning. He emptied out many of the old Bush-era consultants, many of the Karl Rove proteges, and as such, he's had an uphill battle from the beginning. So some of it is Michael Steele, and some of it is the Republican Party fighting back.
There is, Ed, in your party, a range of views when it comes to Afghanistan and even the military. I want to play you sound from Glenn Beck. This is something he said about the war in Afghanistan in June. If we have that soundbite.
I have not seen the government do anything except cause problems, with an exception of maybe defense, but I'd like to give it a whirl on defense that wasn't solely run by the government. I think you have private individuals that could probably take care of things in Afghanistan better.
Sounds like he's suggesting outsourcing the war. Is the Republican position on Afghanistan fracturing?
No, it's not. And first of all, Glenn Beck is an entertainer who used to be on this network. He's now on another network. The idea that you would fight a war as a nation with mercenaries is just absurd. You can have consultants, you can have a whole variety of things, but we have the greatest volunteer military in the world, which is the greatest military in the world. When we basically think it's in our national interest to go to war, as we have in Afghanistan, then we have our own troops that can go do that, and we could do it very well. That's what we're in the process of doing at this point in time. A majority of Republicans in the Congress support that. A majority of Republicans, according to your polls, support that. And it's not the place of the national chairman to basically have a differing point of view.
Mark, Steele did try to clarify his position on Afghanistan. He issued a statement that said, in part, during the 2008 presidential campaign, Barack Obama made clear his belief that we should not fight in Iraq, but instead concentrate on Afghanistan. Now, as president, he has indeed shifted his focus to this region. That means this is his strategy. Did he backtrack? Was that a real clarification?
Oh, no, that was a huge backtrack, but it was also the appropriate statement to make. And I think those of us on the left, particularly the anti-war left, would agree wholeheartedly. Barack Obama ran as a peace candidate, but in reality, he wanted to shift the site of war from Iraq to Afghanistan. Barack Obama does endorse the Afghanistan war, and in many ways, he is responsible for this strategy, and as such, he needs to be held responsible for it. I think that's a reasonable stance to take from the left or the right. But what Michael Steele said from the beginning was something very different. He said something that was simply unfactual and ahistorical, which is somehow that Barack Obama initiated and began to prosecute a war that the Bush administration wanted no part of, when in fact, obviously, the Bush administration went into Afghanistan trying to chase Taliban out as early as 2001. It's just not true.
Ed, let me turn to something that Ron Paul said at the end of the interview. He said that he didn't warn his son enough about what it would be like to run with the national media focus on him. Do you think that Rand Paul has gotten an unfair shake?
No, not at all. I mean, it's a tough game. You know, he's a Senate nominee in the state of Kentucky. He may end up winning this race, but it's a tough game. Every time you're in this game, and you know, it's not the media that does you in. In his particular case, it's his own statements that did him in. You're going to be scrutinized. That's what the public's role is. The media's role is to basically tell its story to the public, to tell your story in some cases. But the only issue I want to make here is going back to the chairman. Chairman doesn't represent the left. No offense to my fellow guest here. You know, you say you're from the left, you want to represent the left, you're from the anti-war. That's perfectly all right. That's your point of view. Michael Steele's responsibility is to represent the Republican Party. The Republican Party today, and has been since the beginning, and we did chase the Taliban out once, we turned it over to NATO, had to come back again, is we have been supportive of the Afghan effort. And we'll vote for it again.
But I agree with that. And my point wasn't to suggest that Michael Steele should be representing the left. What I'm saying is that facts are facts, and whether you're on the left or the right, you have to agree that George Bush initiated military action in Afghanistan, and Barack Obama has carried on that strategy. That was my only point in saying. That's my only point about saying. That's my only point about saying the left or the right.
No question about it. And Secretary Gates, who was held on, probably one of the most important appointments that President Obama did. I'm sure this war effort would be exactly the same if President Bush had had a third term or John McCain had been elected.
That's the sad part.
But that's the
sad part.
Gentlemen, we're going to have to call it quits there. But we could
Thank
go
you.
on all night. Mark Lamont Hill, thanks so much for joining us. And Ed Rollins, as always. And Ed will be back later in the show because we can't get enough of you. And still ahead.